Church Bible Publishers has just released a King James Thinline edition. This matches their recent interleaved edition, and so they sent me a review copy, and the one that I have is brown iron calfskin. A little bit of a soft leather, but I like the calfskin. A little bit of a smooth grain, synthetic liner, perimeter stitched, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spine hubs with gold printing on the spine. Synthetic liner with edge lined. The edge line tab is a little bit stiff, but it's not too bad. Here's our model number, 330RL C1BR. So there's the item number. 33 GSM paper. This is the same paper they use in all their editions that I've seen recently. It does include the epistle dedicatory and the translators to the reader, which also has wide margins, just like the text. Now what they've done is they've taken the text from the interleaved and just removed the interleaved sheets, and it's the same text with wide margins on the outside. We've got almost 1.25 inches wide margin on the outside. A little bit of a margin on the inside. Close to 1/2 inch on the inside, which brings the text out of the gutter. So we have gold ribbons, 1/4 inch, and then we have brown and gold head tail bands. The leather itself is soft but not overly floppy, so you can hold it open with no issues. Have no issues holding this open at all. The text itself is 9-point, but the lowercase letters are a little bit smaller, so it does read a little smaller than that to me, but it does have a lot of space between the lines and in the text, and it is dark and sharp, and I find this easy to read, easy to preach from. This is excellent for preaching if you don't need a larger print to preach from. Good space for notes. Every book starts on a new page so that we have some space at the end of pages, some pages. So this is a text-only edition, so there are no distractions in the text at all. No self-pronouncing marks. It does have italics for supplied words, but there are no other markings in the text. Across the top we have our book name and chapter number. Each verse is indented, so they're easy to find. This reads well. About 8 words per line. And this is a red letter edition, so there's the red. The red looks about a medium darkness. Pilcrows for paragraph markers. Then back here we have 16 pages of the regular Bible paper, and we see that Revelation includes red letter also. So red letter goes all the way through Revelation. 16 pages for notes, and then some thick end sheets. Thick end sheets also in the front that help give it structure. So no presentation pages, no maps or anything like that. This does help keep the Bible small. Let's take a look at the size. We're looking at 6 3/4 roughly by 9 7/8 roughly. But right at 1 inch, a little smaller than 1 inch. Just under 1 inch. And let's weigh. £1 pound, 10 ounces. So this is a good size for carry, good size for reading, good size for preaching. As long as you don't need a large print, this is excellent for preaching. I preached from it 3 times, I think it is, and I liked every time. I had no issues at all. Paper is easy enough to turn. The opacity of the paper, you do see a little bit of show through where there's no text, but it does have line matching. I don't think that's on purpose, but nevertheless, the lines do match. And most of the time, some places where they don't, you can tell. So it's not perfect line matching or anything like that, but where they do match, it is highly readable. So where they don't match is the only place you'll find some distractions. The show through is not as bad as some of the other Bibles I've seen from them, and I think the reason for that is the smaller font doesn't have quite as much ink, so there's not much to show through. So let's compare it to a few editions. This is the interleaved that they sent me last year, and this is the same Bible, just with interleaved pages. So I'm on 572, so let's turn to 572. So you'll see there is the same thing. I'm on Jeremiah 50 on both. So we got the exact same Bible here. And then the next page is here. So they just added the sheets. Now the interleaved also has a few things extra in the back. It's got maps. And it might have presentation pages. So it's got maps and presentation pages, whereas the Thinline does not. But here's how they compare. Footprint is the same because it is the same pages, just a lot thinner. And then another from Church Publishers is their large print text. Same footprint, pretty much. So they kind of keep the standard footprint. And then there's how the thickness compares. The paper in this one is different. It's a little bit rougher and has more show through, partially due to the fact of it being such a much larger print. So here's how they compare. Both are red letter edition, so here's how the red compares in both. This one's easier to preach from, but it's also heavier, larger, so it's a lot more difficult to handle. So if you're looking for something easy to handle, this Thinline is an excellent choice. Another point about preaching is that the footprint is large enough to hold your sermon notes. So if you keep your sermon notes on an 8.5 by 11 page, you can just slide it in there, no problem at all. Easy to carry, slides in a briefcase, no trouble at all. It's a light Bible, stays open, no problem. The font's dark enough, it stays open well enough. It'll take a little bit in Genesis, but it will stay open. I've used this for a couple of weeks now. So it will stay open in Genesis, but it didn't want to do this out of the box. It did have to break in just a little bit, but it wasn't too bad at all. A little bit of room for notes. You can write some references or some word definitions or something like that. So yeah, I like this one. I recommend it for carry and for preaching as long as you don't need a large font. I'll place the links in the notes where you can read the written review at BibleBuyingGuide.com with more detail and more photos, and then also a link to where you can make a purchase at ChurchBiblePublishers.com. Thanks.